So welcome everybody. Today we had the opportunity to sit down with American Business Bank's Regional Vice President from the Corona office, Keith Cerwinski. Keith's going to just be sharing from his experience in banking and working with construction companies, some things he's learned and some strategies that he's seen to prove successful for his clients and ways we can implement that into your business as well. So I think the first way we should start this is, how long have you been in the industry and working with construction companies?
Well, Tyler, I've been in banking for 30 years. I didn't start out as one that works with contractors. I was a typical, worked with manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers. But I grew up here in the Inland Empire, and this was a no man's land back in the day, 30 years ago. This is where a lot of construction was happening, and it piqued my interest. Started working with a contractor here, one there, and next thing I know, most of my career, certainly over the last 20 years, has been devoted to working mostly with those folks in the construction industry.
So as a contractor and dealing with the bank and choosing a bank, what are some traits to look for in a banker that can prove to a successful relationship over the long term?
That's a great question, Tyler. When things are good and the economy's well, all banks, whether they're national banks, local banks, independents, and so on, everybody's happy to work with a construction company. But when the marketplace turns, quickly that SIC code of being a contractor involved in real estate, many banks decide that they want to exit that. And so what they'll do is they'll cut lines of credit, reduce lines of credit, or even ask folks to go find another bank. I think what's important for a contractor to do is ensure that when he or she is looking for a banking partner, that they find one that has experience with working with contractors, deep experience with generals, with specialty subs, and so on. I think that's the type of organization that they want to look for. And they want to find a bank that will not only provide them lines of credit and be supportive of them, also have relationships with good sureties, bonding agents. They want to find banks that will work with them during the good and bad times. Many banks are providing, during the good times, providing lines of credit and credit facilities that are, I say, they're giving them too much money, too much availability. And if the business is not disciplined, they may end up finding themselves getting in trouble because they were given too much money to start with. It's almost, in a sense, it's not just the contractor's fault, but in many cases I think it's a bank's fault for providing that much credit. So I think it's important that they understand that they're working with folks that understand construction, folks that have been in construction for a long period of time. And by the way, those banks have worked with companies during the good and bad times. In 30 years of banking, I've been through 3 recessions. Obviously, the last one in 2007, 2008 was almost a Great Depression.
Right. So a bank that primarily focuses on working with construction companies, what are they looking for when it comes to traits of that client?
Tyler, that's another great question. I think when I look at construction companies, I look at them first and foremost as any other company. I think the most important thing that a bank should look for in any type of client is management, the quality, aptitude, and capacity of management. Because after all, the financials don't pay a bank back, it's management.
Right.
So I think that's number one. Number two, obviously there's financials. We look at financials, we look at the quality of the balance sheet, the strength of the balance sheet, what kind of liquidity is maintained on the balance sheet. That means cash levels, working capital levels. And then we also look at the leverage, the net worth of the company. We're no different than a surety on how they underwrite and provide bonds for construction firms. So we're looking at the same type of dynamics. We're looking for a healthy, strong financial statement.
Right. So just like Jim Collins says in Good to Great, right, that level 5 leadership really stewards the ship forward, and that's the underlying principle of what you're really looking for.
That's correct. So when I think of folks in the construction marketplace, they don't have typical receivables that a manufacturer or distributor have. As a matter of fact, they're progress billings that are billings based on a certain percentage of completion of a particular project. That's not collateral for a bank. So when banks look at construction companies, they're looking at their balance sheet and understanding in many cases it may be they take a UCC1 filing, they may not really have collateral to support the line of credit. So again, it all comes back to the number one, and that's management.
So we all know, one of the most common issues construction companies are facing right now are the cash flow issues and the cash management issues and, really running out of money. Have you seen in your experience working with your clients any solutions they've been utilizing to maybe help mitigate those issues, or open the river a little bit easier?
Well, there's no doubt cash flow is king. I've said that 30 years ago, and I'm saying it 30 years later. It is really important. When folks are working with a GC or an owner on a project, they really need to ensure that they are timely with their payment, that they're doing the proper billing, getting it sent to the GC or to the owners, and hopefully the GC or the owners are not using the contractor as a bank to support their operations.
Right.
Where we see a lot of folks get challenged with cash flow is when it's with regards to change orders. Change orders can really tie them up, and some folks have worked with a particular contractor, general contractor, or owner for a long time, and they will do a change order without asking the owner or the GC if it's approved. And to me, that's a big no-no, because what you can do is end up, when the project's done 6 months later, a year later, coming back and saying, oh, by the way, we did these change orders, we told you about them, you didn't approve them, but now we're asking you to approve them. And what's going to happen is that you've already paid for the materials, you've already paid for the labor, and there should be some profit in that.
Yep.
You might be in a situation where you're having to negotiate what you normally would have paid. So I think of a good best practice is try to really keep tight control on your change order activity. Also, don't use your line of credit. Try to be out of debt as much as you can.
Right.
A lot of folks, when the market is good, and right now, as a matter of fact, you have all these CARB regulations, so a lot of folks are having to change their machinery, equipment, their rolling stock. Be mindful on the level and quantity of product, machinery that you bring in, because sure as we've been in a booming economy for the last 10 years, sure as the sun rises and sets, the economy is going to slow down at some point.
Right.
What you don't want to be saddled with a lot of debt, fully utilized on your line of credit. You want to be in a position where when the market does soften, you have full availability on your line of credit, you have cash in the bank, and you are prepared when the market turns back up. You're fully locked and loaded with the available resources to finance your operations.
Right. So you think a good strategy up front, if there are the possibilities of the change orders, is to have clear communication and say up front with the GC, if there are change orders, this is maybe a time frame we need to get paid back in, or just keep communication as open and possible from the beginning? That's
absolutely right. If I said cash flow is king, communication is queen. You need to have good communication. It needs to be a working relationship. Yes. Where it's a win-win for the developer, for the GC, and for the specialty sub.
2 or 3 areas of the business the leadership team should really focus on to ensure the success and longevity of the business?
Yeah, it's another good question. When I look at businesses today, and I look at those that are successful, that have been around for a long time, decades, a generation, second generation.
Yep.
What I've found, the common theme with those businesses are that the leadership team, the business owner, executives, they're doing a couple things well. They're taking care of their people really well. They're showing that they genuinely care. They're lending an ear, and they're compassionate. They're doing the exact same thing, by the way, with their customers. They're listening to their customers. They're leaving themselves vulnerable, which is great because they are there. They want to make sure that they're doing the right thing always. It's doing the right thing for the organization, right thing for their clients, right thing for their employees. You put those ingredients all together, you're going to have a successful company.
So as we know, marketplaces are always changing over time, and the successful businesses are the ones who really can adapt to those changes the quickest. How do you view the role of a banker in today's current market environment?
Tyler, 30 years ago when I got into the business, I was selling loans, taking in deposits. I was pushing price, pushing bigger lines of credit, and so on. It was product and service driven. Roll back many years forward, and I know, and I've known this for a long time, that may be 10% of my business, maybe 20%. 70, 80, 90% of my business today is acting as a consultant to a business owner. My job is to help them be successful, because after all, being the owner of a privately held company is a lonely spot.
Right.
What folks need, business owners need, is folks that are advisors to them, folks that will help them be successful. They don't have all the answers. They took the risk to start a business, and they've done some very good things, but having somebody there, like a banker, their accountant, their attorney, their bonding agent, their insurance. Those are the folks that they should be surrounding themselves with that will help them be successful. After all, outside providers like bankers, our success is only as good as the success of our clients.
So you really want to focus on building, developing, and maintaining a strong center of influence in the corresponding industries around you.
That's right. As a matter of fact, and you want to make sure those folks are individuals that have direct experience with construction.
Right.
Look, construction is specialized. Someone who does accounting for manufacturers, distributors, it doesn't necessarily mean that they do construction accounting well for a contractor. So you got to make sure it's someone who's got that expertise, can help folks walk through the WIP financial, and then be able to help them. Here's where you're making a margin. Here's where you're having challenges. Because after all, you want to be able to have those questions because the banker is going to ask you those questions as well.
Are there, from your experience, are there any misconceptions or myths that contractors have against the banking industry or bankers in particular?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think it's common in regardless of the industry. A lot of folks think that bankers are happy to lend out money when the sky is nice and sunny and business as well. And then as soon as a rough patch is hit, the bank wants to pull back, doesn't like them as a customer anymore, and is looking to greener fields somewhere else. I think what's important, again, is going back to understanding that banker who's banking them because they believe in management. There's a level of trust, and it's got to be a two-way street. The banker's got to trust the client, and the client has got to trust the banker. A good banker will hand out umbrellas during the sunny days. But what a good banker will also do is during those difficult periods, they will say, Mr. and Mrs. Contractor, do me a favor. Let me come stand under there with you when the clouds are dark and the rain's coming down. We will work through this together. And trust me, in 2008, 2009, many companies were going through difficult periods. Many of them were bleeding red on their financial statements. For those where it was a trust-based relationship with the banker, where there's open communication, and the banker was honest and open with the client, and the client likewise, those folks survive for another day. As a matter of fact, they don't survive, they thrive through the marketplace where it's at today.
So another challenge for many contractors is the passing of the torch, per se, the succession plan. And a lot of times they don't have one implemented, or they haven't thought about it, but when the time comes, they scramble to put one in place. Whether it be an ESOP, passing it to another person on the management team, son or daughter. How do you ensure as a banker to one of these companies that the transition happens very smooth?
Well, Tyler, I think what's important in the banking relationship, even at the beginning, a banker should be talking to the business owner, the leadership team, about what is their succession plan. Because as a privately held company, there are only a few things. They can sell to private equity, they can sell, someone in the family could take on the reins, or through an ESOP. Now, I've worked with companies of all different, that have taken all these different avenues. And what I've done is given them the pluses and minuses. As of late, I've done a lot of ESOPs. And I like ESOPs when I think about today's environment where capitalism has done well for a lot of folks. I think where a business owner or executives decide that they want to generously pass on their company to their employees, to their team, I love that. I think that is the best of capitalism, in my opinion. There's some difficult financing that may need to be involved. It tends to be for a bank, it tends to involve a little more debt on the balance sheet. For the owner doesn't get the opportunity to step quite away. And in fact, when I look at situations, I want the owner, the selling owner, to stay around for a little bit, to mentor that team that he or she is looking to bring up and run the company for years to come. One of the things I like about banking and the many companies I've seen is I like them to become legacy companies. And by being an ESOP-owned company, the folks that started a company in 1930, 40, 50, and 60, those companies are still around today because the owners took great care to see that they have planted the seeds with the right people. And by the way, it's not always just a family member. Many situations I've found over my years that family members, children of business owners may not have that level of interest in working in a family-run business. They don't have the same passion. So let's not try to make them work in that situation, but what the business owners recognize, they have some great employees there that have been dedicated and loyal. And if the owner's giving them that same type of loyalty back. One of the most generous and good things they can do for the company, for the employees, for the future, is do something like an ESOP.
So again, thank you for letting us come in here, sit down, sharing some great advice, and we hope that someone who watches this from a company is able to implement this and really take their business to the next level. But just in case, if anyone does want to get in contact with you and maybe learn more about your story or get some more insider information, where's the best way they can get in contact with you?
Well, thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you taking some time with me this morning. It's always an honor to sit and talk about how we can help entrepreneurs, small to medium-sized businesses do better. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is that small to medium-sized businesses, they're the economic engine of America. So I put all my heart and soul into helping them be successful as best I can. If someone would like to reach out to me, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm there. Please see me. You can call American Business Bank. Look on our website. You'll see me there as well.